Hi all and welcome to Paranormal TV. So in this YouTube channel we like to talk about things that go bump in the night and the creepy scary stuff that goes on in the world. UFO, ghosts and cryptids, missing people and all sorts of things. I'm Guy.
I'm Loui.
And if you like stories told and want something to listen to rather than look at, well, there's a bit of both. I mean, we did put some pictures and stuff in. Then this is the channel for you. So don't forget to like and subscribe. So today we're going to be talking about
the spirit of the Lyndhurst house in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia. So this is a personal experience of mine. As I was saying, guys, this was a personal experience of mine. This is something that I lived through in my early or mid-teenage years. I think I was about probably 14 to 15. From the last video, you recall that we were talking about a Santa Claus effect, which was Attunga, Tamworth. We did move from there when I was roughly about 14 down to Melbourne, Victoria, due to an issue in the family. So we moved around a few houses in Victoria and we ended up in a place in Lyndhurst. It was a relatively new place, which is, I guess, what makes this a little bit unusual, because new places don't tend to hold much spirit form or any entities.
Maybe it followed you.
Could possibly. There's a rumour that that's what it is. But there's also, we've thought that it might have been attached to an object that my mother had purchased while we were in that place. So, they believe it was the consensus of anyone that had been in the house believed it was a little girl. We don't know for sure.
Oh, I was thinking African voodoo mask.
No. So we moved into this place. It was a very nice house, and
how nice?
Fancy, like, you know.
Marble staircase?
No, not that nice. No, not like Casablanca or anything like
Servants?
that. No.
The maid?
I was the servant and the maid, and the cleaner.
And you're part French.
And the cleaner and the cook. But anyway, so at first there wasn't a lot that, would go on. Not much that we noticed, but over a period of months we would notice things that would be moved around on benches or shelves or things like that. Mum would always have ornaments everywhere. She was a collector of everything and anything, and porcelain dolls, etc. So,
dolls are creepy.
Yeah, they are. So every single weekend, everything was always picked up, everything was wiped down and placed back in its normal spot. But during the week, obviously, you get dust that accumulates over the shelving and the benches. And then eventually you would start to notice that something that had been sitting there had been lifted and moved, and you could see where there wasn't any dust, where it was sitting before.
So, like, if you've got some tools in the garage and you might practice some carpentry, or you might be grinding some stuff for the hot rod that you're doing up in the garage, and you have a bottle of drink or a can of something, and you've left it there for a long time, and then you go, I need to clean up, and you move it, and there's this clean spot.
Like a circle where the can would have been.
Yeah.
Where there's no dust or anything like that. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we would start to notice things like that, but there were three of us living in the house. There was my mother, myself, and her friend. And he was not a believer at all. Anything that would happen...
Praise Jesus!
No, he wasn't even a Jesus freak. So anything that would happen, even if you couldn't explain it, it was always, never spiritual or never something paranormal. It was just something that happened, basically. So we did notice things like that happening quite a bit. And eventually my mother and I had sort of mentioned it to each other, because we thought maybe one of us was moving things or whatever. But we sort of discovered that no one had touched anything, because it doesn't get touched until the weekend until you clean it.
Was this to the point of creating arguments? It's like, Loui, where did you put the so-and-so?
No. Nothing was ever lost. It was just moved. So it would only be a slight movement. It could only be like a couple of centimetres.
Oh, like it
normal
didn't
place.
disappear into another room.
Didn't disappear. It would just move from the place it was sitting into like a couple of centimetres away, but visible with the dust to know that where it should have been sitting. So that went on for a while, and then my mother's friend would occasionally sort of mention that while I was at school and she was at work, he would hear someone coughing outside his bedroom door. Basically, all he ever did all day was lie on his bed and read newspapers. So he spent most of his time in his bedroom.
Didn't you have a job?
No, he was a freelancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We won't go down that path.
No, you don't need to get
No. So anyway, he would just sit at home all day doing nothing and lying on his bed all day. That was it. So he would start to hear someone coughing outside his bedroom door. He'd get up, he'd look, and there's no one there. He'd mentioned it a couple of times to my mother, and then we also started hearing it, but this sort of sounded more male, so we're not really sure what we were dealing with, I guess. And then the other weird thing that would happen is we had 3 Maltese Terriers. There was a male and female that weren't from the family, and then there was a son from the 2 breeding. And the 2 male and female, they ended up, female ended up pregnant, and we had a few puppies around the house. And because we were never going to keep the puppies, we never gave them names, so we would just call them, we just go like, here, pop, 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 and they'd just come running. I would get home from school every day, and they'd go straight out to the toilet. We'd go outside, we'd run around, we'd play around and things like that. One afternoon I came home from school, and I was outside with these puppies, and we were playing around. They would have been about 6 weeks old at this point in time, so they were quite well grown and accustomed to being called whenever needed or wanted. And they would always come running when you did call them. But at one point I was outside with all of the dogs. There was 6 at the time, so we had the 3 puppies and our 3 adult dogs that we had. And someone from inside the house started calling the puppies inside. I'm standing outside in the backyard with these puppies, playing with them and letting them go to the toilet and everything.
And there's no one home?
No one's home. So the freelancer that was living with us had actually gone to pick up my mother from work. So there was literally not one person in the house at all except for me and the dogs. The front door was always locked. For reasons that there was a serial killer around at that time too, so nothing was ever left unlocked, especially...
Which one was that?
We'll talk about it a bit later on in one of the videos, but this was Paul Denyer, also known as the Frankston murderer, who took 4 women.
So that's one we owe you. We owe you a couple, actually.
We'll owe you that one, but if you've never heard of that, that's a very interesting story, and yes, I lived through that. I actually lived in the next suburb of that. That was a bit scary. So, needless to say, the doors were always locked at this point, because he was taking young women, and it was a very scary time for the people living in Melbourne.
Yeah, I bet.
So I can guarantee you there was no one else in this house at the time, and a male voice from inside the house, as clear as day to me, started calling these pups like, here, pop, 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 and all the dogs at the same time turned around and ran inside. Like whoever was calling, like someone had called them inside.
But it got worse, didn't it? There was more things happening later. Yeah,
there was a few more little incidents, like, noises and smells. The smells were phenomenal. Like, we would think that a dog had taken a shit somewhere. It was that bad.
We've had that. We had that here.
Yeah.
The other night we were both. Well, the other day I went through some recordings of the Enochian keys. Just quickly, what that was Enoch was this magician in the Bible, and a guy called John Dee in the Elizabethan era. He was the Queen's magician. Started to channel and talk to angels in a crystal ball. And I won't get into it too deep, but the angels have their own language. And if you want to talk to spirits and stuff, you can Google this Enochian language. And I was listening to recordings of Israel Regardie's Nokian stuff in the headphones because it's really dangerous if you play it loud. And then some strange things happened in the house here. The keyboard was on with the computer being off. My phone started playing music without being touched. And the other night we were lying in bed, and we were having a cuddle, and I got this whiff of dog shit. It was like fresh stepped in dog shit. And I looked at Loui and said, "Can I just smell your breath?" And
Which is always charming.
And you said to me, after I said that, you said to me, what did you say?
Something about my...
Did you smell smell?
Yeah, no, I'd smelt dog shit earlier. I think it was a couple of days beforehand.
No, but at that time you smelt it too. We smelt it at the exact same time.
Yeah, actually, yes, I had. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we called out some archangel names and it went away.
Yeah.
But shit like that happens around here because we've got lots of things to show you, haunted dolls and things like that. But anyway, I digress. I talk too much. Sorry. Back to you, Loui. The more weird stuff that happened in the house.
Okay, so yeah, the smells. They were phenomenal. As I've said, we did have 3 at this point in time. The puppies had gone to new homes, so we still had our 3 dogs.
So people had adopted.
Yeah, we'd rehomed the 3 puppies to very good homes. So, like, the smells were phenomenal, and it would always be, you would check the house, because we did have dogs, and it would be like, oh, one of them done a shit in the house. I'd even look under the lounges. I'd look everywhere for this smell, because it was just so strong and so potent and horrible. But you could never find it. So someone had mentioned that at one point that spirit forms, or sometimes when you do have a spirit there is a smell. So eventually we put it down to that it was possibly this spirit that was creating this smell. And then I guess the big final straw of this house was there was one evening I'd come home from school. I'd cooked dinner. Mum had just gotten home from work. We were about to have our dinner. We didn't normally have conventional dinners at that time around a table. I would normally just eat in front of a TV.
I think a lot of people do that these days.
No judgment. Back then it was not really.
Oh yeah, it wasn't kosher, but America invented the TV dinner, didn't they?
But yeah, not getting into any details, but we never did that. So I'm sitting there and I'm about to put the first mouthful of food into my mouth watching TV, and I could hear music. And I'd said to my mother, I was a bit pissed. Like, as you can imagine, I'm sitting there trying to watch TV and I can hear music, and I thought she'd put music on just...
To be a shit.
No, just because that's her thing. She just does what she wants without regard to anyone else. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I sort of turned to her a little bit pissed, and I was like, have you got music on? Sort of thing. And she was like, no. And I was like, can you not hear that? And she's going, hear what? And I went, can't you hear the music playing? And she's going, no, I can't hear anything. And
if you were just hearing it, that means you was going mad.
Well, that's what I actually thought at that point in time, that I was going actually crazy, because I could vividly hear this music. Like, it was loud. So at that point in time, Mum and I are going back and forward about this music that's playing, and no, she hasn't got it. And all of a sudden, the 3 dogs that we had just went absolutely spastic mental and ran for the front door like someone had knocked on it.
Wow.
So, Mum goes to the front door, or Mum goes, oh, there's someone at the door. And I said to her, no one knocked. There's no one there. Like, the dogs are just going crazy. Don't worry about it. And she goes, no, there's someone at the front door. There's obviously someone at the front door. Look at the dogs. So she goes to the front door, opens it, and there's no one there. And then she comes back to me and she goes, did you put the music on? And I said to her, why would I put music on? I'm sitting here watching TV. Why would I have put music on? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, the record player's on. And I said to her, well, go and ask, your friend whether he did it. Like, and maybe ask him not to do that because I'm watching TV.
Yeah.
So she went and asked him, and he said no. We still, I guess we tried to doubt him a little bit because of things that were going on, and because he was always the skeptic that maybe he was trying to play tricks on us. But in all honesty, he was overweight, he couldn't breathe, and if he tried to run out of his room and run back in, we would have heard it. So what had actually happened was my mother was going through some financial troubles at the time as well. She was quite down and, you know, having a few dark days, we'll say. And this particular record that was put on, I don't remember who sings it, but it's that song, "When You Walk Through the Storm, Hold Your Head Up High and Don't Be Afraid of the Dark." That song. Yeah. But the interesting part of that was that song was right in the middle of the record. So someone would have had to have lifted the arm of the record and placed it.
Stylus. Yeah.
And placed it directly on the start of this song.
Hmm.
Now, everyone knows that the arm of the record player has a latch on it that used to hold it down.
Some people don't know that because...
Okay, if you're not aware of that, when you had a record player in the old days, I'm not sure about the new ones that do it, but when you would move the arm of the record back over to put it in its little resting place, there was always a hook that you would put over it that would hold it in place.
So it didn't fall off.
So it didn't fall off, didn't jump, didn't do anything like that.
The playhead or stylus.
So that was always hooked over.
Yeah.
So obviously it's been unhooked. The record player has been turned on, and the arm and the stylus of the record have been lifted and placed to start at this song in the middle of the record.
Select the track, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess at that time it really had strong meaning for my mother.
I hope when I'm a ghost I'm powerful enough to do things like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. So it was all very weird. And let's just say I didn't sleep in my own bed for quite some time after that.
It would be a little bit unnerving, especially if you're a kid and not used to paranormal events happening in your house.
Oh, we were relatively sort of used to paranormal stuff happening, but this was the only time that I was really on my own, in a sense, because all of the other experiences that we've had with my brothers and my sisters and things were around, so it wasn't quite so scary, but this was just basically my mother and me now alone in this house. She had her friend there, but he was about as useless as tits on a tomcat, basically, if you know what I mean. You know, so I wouldn't have put much faith in him to save us, even if the Frankston murder had come along. So yes, needless to say, I did spend quite a few weeks sleeping beside my mother at that point in time, and eventually I did move back into my own room, and from what I can remember, I don't think anything else really happened much from there. I think we moved not long after that, but the funny thing was that most of these things started happening when Mum purchased a particular porcelain doll. So
it's always the doll.
What they were rumoured to have done back then as well is they used real hair on the dolls. So whether that hair was from a deceased person or not, or it could have been from a young child, but just some of the things that were being done were sort of very childlike in manner, like little things being moved around and things like that. So
it's interesting that Aleister Crowley used to say that you should always burn the hair and fingernails if you're a magician.
Yes, because they say that other magicians can use it against you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they use, photos and hair and objects that belong to someone else in wax dollies to do nefarious acts to other people.
It's also
sometimes good things.
Been known to use it in voodoo dolls and those types of things as well.
The dolls I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and you can use voodoo dolls for good too.
So it's not as far-fetched to think that this could have brought, or something could have been attached to this particular doll. And it actually, out of all of the things that were moved, that one never was. It was the only thing that was always untouched. So the conclusion was that the doll was maybe what was brought this thing to our home.
Your haunted doll.
So maybe it wasn't the haunting of the Lyndhurst house. Maybe it was the doll.
The haunted doll
Yeah,
of
possibly.
Lyndhurst.
But speaking of dolls, there was a section before that I actually did miss, and I do apologise about that. But there was towards the start of all this that happened, and I completely forgot about it because it wasn't actually me that experienced it, it was my mum. But she had said to me one day, because I'd visit my father every second weekend and I'd go and stay with him. A bit of backstory, I'm a Virgo. I'm very meticulous with certain things that I do, and I specifically had a way of how I would set my room up.
Just to line all the cups up in the cupboard with all the handles. Colour-coded
pegs, everything, you name it. I was anal retentive about it. And my mother, being a Virgo as well, also would know that I was anal retentive, and she was anal retentive, and she knew how anal retentive I was about the way things were in my bedroom. So she knew my bedroom back to front like I knew my bedroom. And on the weekends, if it wasn't raining, because it is Melbourne, we would always open the windows up to let the air through the house.
It's a bit like English weather, but a bit warmer.
Melbourne's known as the 4 seasons in one day, if you have never been there. So
or if you're from America, you might like to say Melbourne, but we call it Melbourne.
Melbourne, yeah. Occaraz. What can you say?
Melbourne.
So anyway, so this particular afternoon, it was a Friday, my dad had come to pick me up, and as normal, I'd tidied my room up. I had a doll that had been given to me when I was very young. It wasn't porcelain, it was just one of those plastic dolls sort of thing. I don't know what.
Is it the one that your nan used to make the dunny roll?
No, like
Barbie.
No. I can't remember what they were made out of, but it was a christening doll, so it had a really long white christening dress on it, and I used to place it on my bed facing outward, head facing upward, sitting on the pillow. Mm-hmm. The dress spread out beautifully, all the rest of it.
So it's not a little doll?
It was so big.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't huge, but it wasn't small. But the dress was really long. It was a really long... It would be probably twice the size of the doll. It was huge.
I know the type,
and it was lace and all pretty and everything like that. Every little girl's dream. Unless you're a tomboy like me. So this specific afternoon, I'd already gone with Dad. I'd left my bedroom window open just to air it. Mum would always close it if I, wasn't there. And she said this particular night that a storm was coming early, and it was blowing a gale. It was causing a ruckus everywhere. So she went in to close my window, and she'd noticed that the doll that I would normally always meticulously place in this one particular spot had actually been turned away from the window. And she said to her it felt like someone was turning the doll away from the storm so it wouldn't get scared, in a sense, if that makes sense.
So there's a relationship between that song and the doll?
How?
Because the song was when you walk through a storm.
Possibly. I don't think it really meant that. I think the walk through the storm is an emotional...
There's something going on there. Just trying to tell you something.
Yeah, storms. They're awesome. I love storms. You'll catch me out in a lightning storm any day. I love them. I'll risk my life. But, so yeah, it was enough to kind of freak her out a little bit, because she did know exactly how I had my room, and that I would never have put the doll like that. There's no reason for me to put the doll like that. But she said that she felt that the way that the doll had been placed, that someone had tried to turn it away from the storm because it was scared, so to speak.
Wow.
So its back was to the window.
Where's the doll now?
Honestly, I don't know. I think I left it at home when I left.
Oh.
So I think my mother probably got rid of it, to be honest with you.
Oh.
So, and the porcelain doll, as far as I know, the one that we thought was attached to a spirit or whatever, I believe that she's gotten rid of that too. I don't think she has many of them left anymore. So yeah, that's my story. So as Guy has said in a previous video, that he did pre-warn me when we first met that there was a spirit in his house. I think he tried to do it at first to freak me out a bit.
No, I totally didn't. I was just like,
I think you were trying to measure the freak out of, and I was pretty cool about it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, no worries.
Well, the thing is, I was never into this stuff. I was into it as much as any kid was during my teen years. I didn't really have any creepy experiences. I think maybe when I was a little kid, I remember lying in my cot and there was like this weird handprint that looked like a claw. That was like that. I don't know. I don't remember, but I remember there was a dirty handprint on the wall in my cot, and it looked like something, not like a dog paw, not like a human hand, but maybe a blend of both. And this was in a second floor unit in Bondi, and that's the first weird thing that I remember. I've never had anything weird happen. I watched the UFO and ghost stuff as much as anyone else did who was just curious about the world. And then it was only really when I moved into that house and was told that it was haunted, did weird things happen. And then when I met you, and I said that to you, and then the weird things did happen, and you witnessed them happening.
Yeah, I heard the steps up the hallway and the knocking on the doors and all these weird and wonderful, strange things that happened in that house.
Yeah, and then you started to tell me your ghost stories.
Yeah.
And then we went off and started to explore and delve deeper. And then we met your friend Nick, who used to have...
She used to see auras of people.
And she had a ghost that used to talk to her.
Yeah.
We can do that quick. You want to do it? Or you want me to talk? Well, she's your mate, so... She had a pet python, and we don't talk to her much anymore because she moved to...
Adelaide, somewhere, I think.
Yeah, she moved away from where we were. And she used to tell me, that she had a ghost granny that used to sit in a rocking chair and converse with her in the middle of the night. And it didn't freak her out. She was like a little kid, and she was like totally cool with that. And that the TV would change channels. And that she had also an interest in the strange and weird. And she gave me that spell book.
Yeah.
And it's like, how to get $20, just do this spell. And I did it, and it worked. And then I started to collect more weird books.
She studied angels and everything like that. She was quite spiritual. I believe that she still is, in a sense, but as we said, we don't really talk much to her anymore. The only other thing that she did say when she was younger was she used to also see auras over people. Like, she would see people's auras. And she would mention it to her parents, her mum, and her, I think it was her stepdad, and things like that. But because they couldn't see them, they thought it was just the child's imagination and telling her she was being silly and all this kind of stuff. And then once you get, I think a lot of people understand that as you get older and you get told that these things don't exist, then you start to not see them anymore because you're being told that they're not real. So it's like a switch in your brain that sort of turns it off, in a sense. We all have the ability, from my understanding, to be able to see spirits and things like that. But
you need to re-practice as you get older.
Oh, I guess it's just the programming as you get older. If your parents are a little bit more understanding of things like the supernatural and spiritual things, that you're more likely to have seen or be able to see things and continue to see those things in your adult life. Whereas if you're told as a child that these things aren't real, your imaginary friend's not real, the old lady that you just saw walk past you, things like that, they're not real, but you're seeing them vividly, they are real. But because an adult mind can't comprehend what you're seeing, and because they can't see it, it's not real, I guess.
I think too, you become busy, and as the years go on with your work life, you wake up when the alarm goes off, you have a coffee or whatever, You might eat breakfast, you might look at your phone or read the news or watch TV, or you might not even have time. And then you're out the door to work, you're doing work, you come home and you're tired and you put the TV on, maybe have some dinner, and then you sleep, and you do this repeat, and then you've got the weekend. But the trick to sort of seeing spirits and orbs and auras is to just calm the fuck down. You need to chill and be in that alpha brain state.
Be in the now.
I'd like to talk about brain states in a different video, but I think for now...
that's the ghost stories that I guess we have. Another video, I guess we'll discuss some UFO things that have been seen.
Oh yeah, there's that, but we didn't finish with the whole egregor spirits.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Later on down the track, we'll start addressing UFO things and that as well that we've personally experienced.
Yeah, we had some UFO stuff, which is like, if you go looking for it, it's going to find you.
When we say UFO, we don't mean the little green men or the little grey aliens running around. All we're saying is that it is an unidentified flying object. It was an object that we could not identify at the time, and it was flying. So we're not talking about little green men running around.
No.
So on that, if you are from the country, you more than likely have experienced a lot of things in the sky that you can't explain, and the reason, I guess, being country
you had that before me, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You're like the spooky shit magnet.
But I think the explanation for more UFO sightings in country areas is because you see more in the country. There's not as many lights blocking the sky. You get more of a visual of the stars and the sky and everything around it when you're in a country without the buildings and everything getting in the way and those types of things. And
not true that.
Yeah, so once you've got an open sky in an open area, you'd be very surprised at what you can see. So on that note, we'll leave it there, and we will get back to a UFO thing later on down the track, but we're going to get onto egregors, and we will start going into things like serial killers. I've also mentioned Paul Denya, the Frankston killer, who I'll do a little bit more on later.
Yeah, you've got to read up your notes and things like that.
Yeah.
So, that's it for this one. Please like, subscribe, and share the shit out of it. You know, do the button thing. There. Where is it? I don't know where it is.
I don't know.
But it's on the bottom of the video somewhere.
The one that says like, and the other one that says subscribe.
And we've got some really cool stuff coming up. So see you next one.
Bye.
Cheers.